Welcome to the Tough Fish Show. I am so excited to bring to you Michelle Glogovac. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I know already we are going to have a blast.
Oh,
So,
yes. Yes, yes. I am so glad you are here. And I would love for you to start with how did you get into writing?
I have always loved writing. I wrote journals as a kid. Like I had so many, and I threw them out. Unlike Merle Saferstein that you've had on the show, I threw mine out. I did not save them in a safe. And I've always just simply loved writing. I've had a gratitude journal as I'm an older adult, not old, but older. And just a free writing journal. I love writing. I love reading. And I interviewed a book coach on my podcast and said, I really want to write a book. And she asked, on what? And I said, I don't know. Isn't that like what your job is? Shouldn't you like coach me as to what? And she said, your first book should be on what you know and what you're known for. And that was the light bulb of, okay, then I'm going to write about how to get on podcasts. I'm going to write everything that I know, but then put it into a format where it's more me. Didn't want a boring business book. So the book entirely relates to a dinner party and your types of friends and happy hours. And so it really brings more of me into it than simply you're going to write a pitch and you're going to send it off and research podcasts. So I think it's a fun book. I've gotten feedback. Even the audio engineer on the audiobook thought that it was great. He was ready to go change his life, he said afterwards. So that was really the story of how I got into it. And now that I'm in it and interviewing authors and working with more authors, I just want to write more.
Oh, I love that. And I love the fact that, you did start with something that you knew you were known for, but also that passion was there because that passion is going to show up in the book. And the fact that you kind of turned it on its head to say, well, let me show you a fun way to look at this. You took something that could be intimidating for somebody and basically distill it a little bit and make it and take the scary away from it. Make it seem like, hey, you've done this before. You can do this. You've done this. So let's look at this a little differently because this is something you can do.
And that was really my hope because, like everybody who's never done this before, there was a point where I didn't do it before.
Mhm.
I didn't even know how to listen to a podcast until 2018. And then I was working on podcasts, and suddenly I'm launching my own, and now I'm being interviewed. So I understand where everybody is starting from. I have been there too. And as I have evolved over 6, 7 years and, mastered what I do, I've kept track of how do I do it? What am I doing? And here's how you can do it. And I'm a big fan of simplifying as much as I can and making processes out of all of it. So my whole hope and goal is to just simply share it with everyone. Like we were talking about before, there are no standards in podcasting. So my hope is to elevate the pitching standard so that it's not copy and paste. So you are listening to a show before you pitch to them. You are personalizing everything and saying, hey, Jen, I appreciate what you're putting out there. And I loved your episode with Merle. And journaling is so great. And it's helped me that you actually share of yourself from the get go. And you continue that throughout your pitch. And then you show up and you do the same thing in your interview. And that's the standard on top of sharing it, because that's the big one at the end. But that's the standard. I hope that it becomes the actual standard in our industry.
Oh, love language, love language, love language. Because I mean, I will tell you that I receive pitches that's like, hey, I have a new book. I'm like, good, congratulations. That's awesome.
Right. You're not going to
And
interview the book. You're going to interview the person. So why are we
right,
pitching a book?
right.
Stop pitching the book.
Well, and I get that there might be a podcast that fits your genre where it is about the latest book, but you still want to connect. Why? But a show like this where it's about the message and it's about the person, even when I have somebody who said, "Hey, I've been on the show before and I have a newer book," I'm like, "Fantastic. What topic would you recommend that we talk about that's different from the previous one
Right.
besides the fact you have a new book?" Because I do think it's great. I do know the effort it takes. And I wanted to add value to the listener and feel like it is it feels like a good relationship, a good opportunity.
Yeah. And you're bringing something new of
Mhm.
value. I feel that podcasts should inspire, motivate, and educate. And if you're
Mhm.
not doing that in the pitch, then you're not going to do that in the interview either.
That's so true. And I love what you're talking about where you're taking the time to research the podcast because you know, just because you get a name or you see something that scrolls through your social media feed, like, oh, okay, so they take guests. Well, that's a good thing because not all shows do, but
Right?
but does that show still resonate with you? Even with as a host, even when I pitch someone to say, I'd love to have you on, I tell them what I've noticed, I tell them what the show is about, and then I tell them if it resonates with you because it may not, and it's okay if it doesn't. I just look at that like I recognize that they can say no just as much as I could turn down a request, but I want them to feel just as good coming on as I did about asking, you know?
Right. It's just like not everybody's going to be our friend, and nor do we want to be everybody's friend. That's simply, how life works. It's the same thing with podcasts. Not every single one is meant for you, nor are you meant for them. And that's why I think that when it comes to rejection and, oh, what if the podcasts all say no? You say no and move on. Like keep pitching yourself because with 2 million shows out there, you will get some yeses. I promise you that.
2 million. Wow.
Not
Uh,
all active, but there are 2 million. Yes.
wow, that's amazing. And again, not all 2 million are taking hosts or taking
Mhm.
guests. Not all 2 million are all in the genre or the messaging or the themes or the topics that you're talking about. So that homework that you're talking about is really important too. So let's transition just a smidge into your book
Mhm.
because with your book, I know that you were talking about, we were chatting earlier about how you wanted it to be something that the reader could implement, that they could actually make it work for them. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
So podcast pitching and just PR in general seems like something that people can't, not all people, but a lot think that it's not reachable. It's not attainable. It's not something that they can do. And then at the same time, it's oh, well, I could do it if I go spend thousands every month and hire someone to do it. And that's not feasible either. So I wanted to write down everything that I do and know how to do. And it was hard. The first chapter was literally the hardest chapter to write because I naturally will talk to someone and say, you should talk about that. Oh, that's a good one. You should do that one. And I had to figure out why is it that I say that? And what is it that clicks for me? What questions am I asking in order to be able to do that? And I wanted people to be able to have that homework of, okay, if I ask myself these questions, if I start thinking about what have I done? What's my journey been? What did I do for my career? What pivots did I take? What did I overcome in my childhood that made me who I am today? How do I write my book? What are my rituals? What parts of me are in my book? If you start thinking about that, then you're able to create all of these speaking topics for yourself. And I wanted to make it as easy as possible for you to do. And I've been told, I actually had someone early on who bought the book go, I didn't know there was going to be so much homework. Yes, this is not easy. That's why you pay thousands of dollars to people to pitch you because it's not easy and it shouldn't be easy. If it was easy, then copy and paste would be acceptable. But you really need to dig into what can you speak on? What do you want to speak on? Who do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known for? And who are you trying to talk to? So I wrote the book so that you can do that on your own. And yes, it will take time and it won't take money though. That's the beauty of it. It will take time for you to really focus and figure all of these things out. But in the end, if you implement everything the right way, then you elevate your brand, elevate your self as a thought leader. You now have marketing content that you won't even know what to do with because every single episode you can repurpose into a blog post. You can take quotes from the transcript. You're adding it to your Spotify playlist. You can post it on all of your social media. So now you have all of these marketing things that are also going to help your brand. And it becomes accessible and attainable in a way that it wasn't before.
I love that you said all of that. It's like music to my ears. But the other thing that I was really just appreciating too is that yes, you might want to pay somebody else to ask those questions or do that work. And somebody else might have a different skill set to be able to help you. And there's nothing wrong with getting the help, but at the same breath, they're getting that information from you, the author. You
Hmm.
need to be really clear about what those are, or working with somebody who can ask you those questions and help push a little bit more to get to those answers. Because when you do, when you are clear, you can talk about your books, your business, your message in other ways, even beyond the podcast. But what that work was doing was helping you get that clarity and get comfortable talking about yourself and about your work and your message, because sometimes it can be easier to write that manuscript and hit publish than, oh my gosh, you want me to also talk about it or be seen on
Right.
camera and talk about it or seen on a stage? Yes, yes, we do. Because,
Yes.
but I believe that with that you were given that message for a reason. And because of that, you are the right person for it. But it's about getting comfortable with that too. So, how would you advise a reader who might feel a little overwhelmed with homework, but still has the interest and the drive to do it, but might feel a little overwhelmed? What would you suggest they do?
I say take your time. None of this has to be done overnight. So take your time. And I think even in the book, I say, like, this is a good time to like pause, just reflect, do what you need to do. I've included playlists. So,
Nice.
if you need something to calm you down, there's a playlist for that. If you need something to build your confidence, there's a playlist for that. There's even links to different meditations and breath work and stuff to really just be okay with it all.
Mhm.
And what I also say, whether it's in the book or in any interview I do, it's that your story has the power to change someone's life. Because somewhere out there, we go into things thinking my story's not unique. What is so special about me? And yet, what is special is the way you tell your story and what your story is, because someone out there is going through exactly what you have gone through, whether it is grieving or traumatic experience, or they're writing a book, or they're building a business, or they're a first time parent. They're going through something and they don't know how to get out of it. And if you've overcome something, you have those building blocks and steps that they can take, and you share what you did, then now you've given them hope and you've given them a way to accomplish whatever it is that they're looking to do. And now you've changed their life. So, isn't it your duty to be able to share that? And in addition to that, who can say that, my time on this planet, I changed someone's life simply by sharing my story on a podcast? What more is there that you need to do? Really, like, you're done. To me, great, you're done. You've accomplished it. You've changed someone's life, and that's so impressive and amazing. And if one interview can do that, why aren't you doing it?
You know, I really love that you said that, because I've talked before on this show, it's come up with so many interviews about the ripple effect. You really have no idea what that ripple effect is, because you you published your book, somebody read it, somebody heard your message, somebody heard you, and what you said, the way you said it, or maybe what you wrote on the page felt like a laser right to your heart. Like, how did you know exactly what I needed when I needed it in that way? You don't know the ripple effect you will have. So doing that first podcast interview, that might feel really scary. I remember the very first podcast I was doing, I co-hosted. I had no idea what I was doing. I remember researching, like, well, how do you do this? How do you structure it? How does this happen? And I had no idea what I was doing. And I kind of mapped out like a clear plan. And it was a teaching one of teaching leadership concepts. But, you know, I did I had no idea what I was doing. And then I decided, okay, well, I'm going to try a different route. I'm going to just do one on my own. And they were short and sweet, just me. Here's what it is. Again, on leadership. And then I liked that, but they were like bite size, really short, short, short. And I did get pitched for people to be on that show. It was great. Like, this show is this is Jen waxing poetic. No, kind of. And then this show came because I genuinely like getting to know people and like serving. I am a writer. I am an editor. I like helping writers. I believe that there's that story. So I wanted to create that space, and it just naturally started to evolve. But you still feel a little nervous when you're first starting something. But if you, one of the things I like to talk about is if you go in to that interview or to that space, speaking engagement, book signing, podcast, and you go in with the mindset of that host is happy to have me. That host audience, that those listeners or the attendees or whatever, they are going to be a nice audience, a likable audience, a warmer audience, warmer in the sense that even if they don't know me, they're there because of the street cred that the host has provided because of that.
Exactly. Hmm.
And if you go in with the mindset that this is something not scary, but welcoming, well, hey, I mean, doesn't that feel a lot better than going in like, oh gosh, this is going to be horrendous? It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be, but it's also how you shape that mindset. And it sounds like the things you were talking about with the holistic approach, really taking the breath, listening to the music, shifting your energy, shifting your focus. You're helping that listener or that podcast guest to get into the right headspace so that they feel like it's going to be a good experience for them.
Yeah. And I also say, look at it as it's just a conversation with another human being.
Yes.
You're just showing up to coffee. Yes, they're a stranger. You don't know them. But if you've done your homework and you've stalked them a bit, then you've read their website and you've listened to some episodes. So at least you have some talking points. If suddenly you're afraid that the conversation is going to go dry, you can say, oh, by the way, I saw, on your website that you're a developmental editor. And like I asked you before, I'm like, what does that mean? I have no idea what that means. Please help me. Yes, I did write a book, everybody, and published it, but that's another story. And so you have a talking point. You have something that can break the ice. So do a little bit of research so you're armed with that knowledge of one fact of the other person, because thanks to the internet, we can get all kinds of facts on the person that you're going to speak to. It's not like going into Starbucks and you sit down at a random table with a random person. You literally can find out something on this other individual who's interviewing you, so you have something to talk about. And they already have stalked you as well. So they know what they're going to want to talk to you about. I'm a big stalker. You can tell I love the whole stalking thing. I shouldn't be the podcast matchmaker. I should be the podcast stalker.
I seriously love that name though, the podcast matchmaker. I think that is so sweet because what I see in that is that it's it's showing joy. It's showing that this can be fun. This can be enjoyable. This can be something that you're building really, you can build really great connections. It doesn't have to feel transactional. They can be, but it doesn't have to be. And if you're going at it with the right mindset, you really can create some lovely connections that you don't know where they can go.
Exactly. I've had clients write books. They've been asked to contribute to them. They've gotten job offers. They've gotten speaking opportunities. I had one who, and it's funny because I didn't know that he said this when I was hired on by this nonprofit, but he was skeptical about podcast interviews and sharing his story and what it was. He came back saying he had no idea how people would reach out to him, empathize in what he'd been through, want him to speak on more shows. He said it was so amazing the effect that it had. He was like, sign me up to do all the podcasts. Like, I want to do it. And I had no idea that when we started working together, he was like, I don't know that this is going to work. This isn't like, people aren't going to change their minds. But, podcasts are also an opportunity for, I think, we probably all have an interest on something that maybe we don't share with others. These are times where we get to hear stories that we wouldn't otherwise hear of somebody. We might be watching Lifetime and we're like, oh, the true crime stuff, or we want that. But yet, when do you talk to somebody in real life who, was the criminal or was the survivor or something like that? But you can you can listen to a podcast who has
Mhm.
all of that, and you can understand what somebody's been through by simply listening to their story and building empathy around whatever it is that we don't otherwise, depending on where we live or how we were raised or what part of the country we're in. So I think it's a beautiful thing that we can listen to and be a part of without ever having to leave our houses.
And what I'm also hearing is that, if somebody was feeling like, I don't know if this will work, but the very first thing in any case really was you got to try. At least if the idea was presented to you, somebody saw something in you that you could do that. Even if you couldn't see it in you, give it a try. And if you try it and you don't like it, okay. But if you try it and it felt like, okay, that wasn't so bad, maybe I can try again, and you're dipping your toe in, you're getting more comfortable, well, then do that. And that also goes back to what you were saying earlier about doing your homework on that show. Does that show feel like a show that feels comfortable for that? Does that show feel like that's a good space for that? Or would that feel like, no, not right yet? Maybe later, but not right
Mm-hmm.
now. That's okay. That's okay. And one of the things that as a host, to me, I think it's really, really cool, to your point, not just when that my guest has done the homework, but when my guest is actively engaging, that they recognize that this is truly an asset because the host took the time to have them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But in the same breath, if you're relying only on the host to promote you, then really why did you bother? Because
Right.
from my perspective, yes, I mean, I'm happy to promote, I'm happy to have you, but I would think you wanted to do that too. Not so you, Michelle, per se,
Oh,
but
I
just,
will.
but
No,
you,
I
no,
will.
no, no, yes, but not, but sometimes you get a feeling that it was like, no, I just like, yep, needed to get a podcast done, or I wanted to do a podcast, great experience. Yep, go to the next one. And I get that, but you want to keep showing up and you want to recirculate it and coming back at different angles and share what that was because it's an asset for you. It's something that you can leverage. And hey, you didn't even need to put, all you needed to do was show up. So why not
Yes.
maximize a resource that you have?
I am asked so often, what's my ROI on an interview? And I go, well, what'd you do? You showed up. Did you do anything after that? Did you share it? Did you make a graphic? What did you do? Because depending on the host is really not fair. You're not thanking the host, first of all, and they have taken the time and the money because to produce a show, you're editing it, you're, posting it on a host, and there's all of these other things that are involved. So the way you thank a host is not in your Instagram stories for 24 hours. That is lazy. You create something that lives forever. And then that way, when you're tagging the host and then they're resharing and you're resharing and like all these beautiful things are happening and you're reaching more followers, the host is now getting exposure to your followers who might not have known about the interview before. But on top of that, I like to remind clients that although you may have followers who are watching you, you don't know who they all are. You don't know if there's that one person who really wants to be your client, really wants to read your book, really wants to work with you. And they need that extra push. And then suddenly you're on a podcast. They didn't know about it, but you shared it because you did thank the host and did your job. They go and listen, and that was all they needed. That
Mhm.
was that next step that they needed to hear your voice, to hear what you could share, to understand that you are the thought leader, the person that is the expert in what you do. Now you've done it. And it's not self-promotion, it's not salesy. It is simply a way to thank the host and to market where you've been and what you've done.
I love that because I can understand how some authors might feel like sharing about myself feels awkward, or I can talk about the book and that's easier because it's this, it's this thing that I can talk about. But talking about me almost feels like, uh, I don't know, the attention or maybe I'm not sure I'm really all that. Yes, you are. You
Mhm.
wrote this book. You have so many skill sets that just went into creating that. You're somebody who your readers or your potential clients want to know more from, want to know more about you. And there's something very powerful about that reader or that listener being able to hear you, not just hear the message itself and hear the actual words, but it's about the cadence, it's about the tone, it's about getting to know you. And when you go in, trusting that it's a safe space, trusting it's a happy space, a space that you are welcomed and wanted, and that you want to be there, and you're excited and you're focused on serving, you're your people are hearing that and going, yeah, I need more of that. I need that
Yes.
person in my world.
You're giving them the opportunity to fall in love with you. And if they're going to fall in love with you, then they're going to fall in love with whatever you're writing. And I always love to compare to me, authors are celebrities. My treasured possessions are all of my autographed books. But when I walk down a street, am I going to recognize an author? And I can tell you no. Like I lived in LA for a while and Christian Slater would go to my Starbucks and he'd say good morning. And I'm like, "Oh, it's Christian Slater." Like, "Oh my gosh, Christian Slater said good morning to me." I was in New York in a hotel lobby. This woman comes up to me and she's like, "Oh, it's so cold outside." Da, da, da. We're there for a book event. And, "Do you have a book?" "Yeah, I have a book." "You have a book?" No idea who she is. Turns out she is the author, Angela Brown, who wrote Olivia Strauss's Running Out of Time. And I felt like such a moron because here it is. I have the book on my Kindle. I have downloaded it. I am loving it. And this woman is right in front of me, but I have no idea what she looks like. And so if we're on podcasts and we're getting to know other people, this is how we get to know you and recognize you. And I really feel like this is what we need because we love you already. We love what you are putting out into the world. So give us that chance to get to know you and recognize you, please.
I love that so much. And this kind of goes back to, again, matchmaker. I mean, I really do, because I think I think that writers want to be creative in finding other ways to get their books out. And in the same way, sometimes when you're the writing process might have been frustrating at times. But the craft in and of itself is still familiar. Even if you wrote yourself in a corner, even if you're frustrated with the edits that are coming back, even if you cannot seem to get these characters in line or a story's not really working out the way you thought, it's still something very familiar. It's still something very known. And you know how to research that problem. You know if you need to go do some research or maybe go share it with a critique group or hire somebody who can help you flesh out further. Or maybe it's something that you need to change in a different way, but it's familiar. Podcasting, yes, there's resources. Hello, we're talking about a few of them, but in the same breath, that's new too. That might be scary too. And somebody who likes to write might not necessarily be someone who wants to speak. So how would you help that writer who is maybe sitting on the fence or recognizing, okay, I I know I need to try this. I try podcasting, but I'm still a little nervous. What would you tell them?
Well, some of your options are to do a book signing and be in front of a bunch of strangers. So, you can balance that part out. I always love to bring up that, coming on a podcast, you only have to speak to one person. And there's so many authors who consider themselves introverts. They don't want to be on a stage. They don't want to have to go meet all the strangers or put out all of the money and the effort to do a book tour and go places and pay for hotels and airline tickets. And yet, here on a podcast, you only have to show up for one person. You can be in your home, you can be pajamas waist down, uh, show up nicely on top because you don't know if it's video, you should, but to really just look at it as a conversation with one individual. Don't think about the hundreds or thousands that will listen later. But, there's value in that. There's value in the fact that it's going to reach so many more people. And all you have to do is talk to one other person. The other person probably has read your book. They are a fan already. They already appreciate you because they're inviting you to be on the show. So you know that they like you. Like this is a given. You're not going to come up for some critique and they're going to, "Oh, your writing is this and I hated this character," or anything like that. They're going to talk to you as just a good person, a normal human being who wants to get to know you. And if you show up in that mindset of, "I'm just going to have a conversation, I'm just going to have my cup of coffee and we're going to chat and I'm going to let you get to know me and I'm going to get to know you," then it's much more relaxed and you can do it from your home. You're not on a stage. You're not sitting in a bookstore, behind a table. I mean, I've done it. So I know you're like looking at everybody who comes in the bookstore going, "Are you here for me? Do you know who I am?" Like, Like I've been there, okay? In my hometown. So I know what that's like. Whereas this, I know you are here for me and I am here for you. And that's a beautiful thing. And it's simple. So don't overthink it, is what I would say. And just show up and share of yourself and see what kind of potential there is in doing a podcast interview. I'm not saying don't do all of your book tour stuff. Like, go do that too if you want to. But this is a great way to market your book, to get yourself out there, to elevate your author brand, and to get to know other people and allow others to get to know you.
Michelle, I love that. That is so beautiful. This has been fantastic. I just have loved every moment of this. Where can people connect with you? Where can they get their book? Where your book, and where can they get to be part of your world?
I'm everywhere. No, you can get the book, How to Get on Podcasts, everywhere you buy books. It's hardcover, Kindle, and audiobooks. So if you like listening to me, I will read the book to you. You can find my agency website, themlgcollective.com, and my personal website, michelleglogovac.com. My podcast is My Simplified Life, and I'm on all the social media platforms, most active on Instagram at Michelle Glogovac.
I love this. Thank you so much, Michelle. This has been a blast.
Thank you, Jen. I've had so much fun.